The Beacon Hill neighborhood in Boston, Massachusetts is one of the most prestigious areas in the city and state. Beacon Hill is one of the oldest neighborhoods in the US and one of the smallest neighborhoods in Boston, roughly 1 square mile in size. The neighborhood is full of brick homes, cobblestone streets, and an air of dignity with some of the finest examples of Federal and Greek Revival architecture in the city. Beacon Hill is one of the tallest points in Boston, originally made up of 3 hills, 2 of which were level to make more space for development. Beacon Hill is located north of Boston Common, bordering both the Common and Public Garden, as well as downtown, Back Bay, and the Financial District. There are 3 main sections of this neighborhood: the flat of the hill, the north slope, and the south slope. During the 19th century, Beacon Hill was home to both the richest and poorest Boston residents. On the south side lived some of the city's most patrician families, the so-called Boston Brahmins, and the less wealthy individuals on the north slope. Today, both slopes are highly sought after, and Beacon Hill is one of the city's most exclusive residential neighborhoods. There are 2 main property types which can be seen in Beacon Hill: Federal style, which can be identified by a smaller window on the 3rd level, as well as brick front row houses. These are considered single-family residences or will have been converted into condo units. Homes are generally different from the traditional Boston brownstones, as the brownstones are townhouses with a more 3D shape and bay windows. There are typically differences between the 2 neighboring homes, whereas with the row houses in Beacon Hill, they are much more flat, and neighboring homes share an almost identical facade. In this video, we are looking at the 6 best streets on which one can live in Beacon Hill. While the entire neighborhood is sophisticated and highly desired, the streets we are looking at today are the most exclusive and expensive. We will talk about key characteristics of homes on these streets, what to consider if you're searching for a property in Beacon Hill, along with the cost to own a home here. Starting off with Acorn Street, which is a small street, or more accurately an alleyway, that is famous for its charming cobblestones, gaslit lamps, red brick sidewalks, and overall historic look and feel. It is arguably the most photographed street in Boston, and some even say the entire country. Acorn Street is famous because it's an original cobblestone street, which is super rare to find these days in the US. It is lined with charming Federal-style row houses, complete with antique street lamps and hanging ivy. The entire setting, while unexpectedly small, is a sight to behold and almost museum-like. The cobblestone alleyway at Acorn Street was laid in 1823, more than 200 years ago, back when it was home to artisans and general laborers. Today, walking here feels like stepping back in time. The 200-foot-long Acorn Street has its original cobblestones, which makes it such a rare and interesting destination. Right after a rainstorm, the colors tend to pop more on the cobblestone and bricks, giving the area an even cooler effect. It is located on a private way, but members of the public can still legally access the street. As a word of caution between the photographers and tourists, the area can get a little busy at times, which may not be ideal for everyone. There is currently a proposal for putting a security gate on the street. Also, the cobblestone is extremely rugged and can be a challenge to walk up in the winter. Interestingly, Acorn Street is a private way, which means that it does not receive maintenance or upkeep from the city of Boston. There are a total of 11 homes on Acorn Street, consisting of 7 single-family residences, 2 condos, and 2 multifamily homes. Home sales on the street are extremely rare, and over the past 10 years, there have been a total of 5 transactions. The average sales price for single-family homes on Acorn Street is a little over $3 million and $1.9 million for condos. The most recent, least expensive sale was in 2017, 1 Acorn Street Unit 1, a condo with 1,900 square feet, which sold for $1.9 million. The most expensive sale recently happened in 2023, a single family with 2,300 square feet, sold for $3.5 million. Next is Pinckney Street, which was originally a glorified service alley lined with the stables for the larger homes on the south slope of Beacon Hill. The majority of these properties served as a buffer street between the mansions of the Brahmins who lived closer to the Boston Common and the working-class neighborhood of the North Slope. Like most streets in Beacon Hill, this one has historical significance in that numerous important figures from the past have lived here. There are several unique homes on Pinckney Street, including the Glapian Middleton House, which is the oldest house in Beacon Hill. Also, the House of Odd Windows, built in 1802, which was originally constructed as a stable. At the end of Pinckney Street, before reaching Storrow Drive, is the River House, a 221-unit condo building with pristine skyline and Charles River views. There are plenty of trees and ivy covering many of the brick homes. While still quite narrow, sections of Pinckney Street are slightly wider, making navigation here easier. There are 59 single-family residences and 350 condos, a majority of these being the units at the River House. Several of these properties include parking spaces, a rarity in Beacon Hill. Pinckney Street also passes by Louisburg Square, which will be discussed later in this video. Over the past 3 years, 39 homes have traded hands with an average sales price of $4 million for single-family homes and $800,000 for condos. The least expensive sale was 112 Pinckney Street, Unit 3, a 550 square foot studio, which sold for $510,000. The most expensive sale was 97 Pinckney Street, a 6,000 square foot single-family residence, which sold for $6.1 million. Another prominent Beacon Hill street is West Cedar Street, which runs parallel to Charles Street, the major thoroughfare in Beacon Hill. West Cedar is part of both the north and south slopes, and at one point was directly on the water before more land was created for further development. Similarly to Acorn Street, West Cedar is quite narrow. However, there is much more room to walk or drive as well as park. West Cedar has a lot of trees and greenery, giving the street quite a unique feel and freshness. 90% of Cedar Street is residential, however it is also home to a flower shop, one restaurant, and several offices at the end of the street. There are 44 total single-family homes on Cedar Street with 106 condos. Several of these properties have a private patio garden, and some have roof decks with skyline views. One important thing to note is that there is absolutely no parking included with any of these homes, and public spaces can either be found on the street or rented at the nearby Brimmer Street garage. Over the past 3 years, 28 properties have traded hands with an average sales price of $4.6 million for single-family residences and $1.1 million for condos. The least expensive sale was 59 West Cedar Street Unit 1, a 490 square foot studio, which sold for $400,000. The most expensive sale was 22 West Cedar Street, a 5,400 square foot single-family home, which sold for $7.9 million. Next is Mount Vernon Street, which is the longest residential street in Beacon Hill. It runs from the Massachusetts State House to Storrow Drive and encompasses both the south slope and flat of the hill sections of the neighborhood. Mount Vernon is much wider than the previously mentioned Beacon Hill streets and is two-way for the majority of the street. This makes navigation and finding parking much easier. The majority of Mount Vernon is of course residential, however towards the end of the street there's a coffee shop, restaurant, a church, and several offices within the red brick brownstones. On the left side of Mount Vernon, at 40 and 42 Mount Vernon Street, are two of the first houses in the neighborhood to be built of brownstone rather than brick. These were built for a prosperous individual in the early 1800s. Just past these houses are three comparatively modest brick row houses, which were built around 1825, and further in the distance are three single-story buildings. These are probably the oldest buildings on the street, dating back to 1804, when they were built as a carriage house for homes on Chestnut Street. Despite their size and humble origins, all three have survived to present day, and have since been converted into luxurious residences. There are 30 total single-family residences on Mount Vernon Street and 252 condos. The majority of the condo units are within two buildings at 97 Mount Vernon Street and 70 Mount Vernon Street. Over the past 3 years, 54 homes have traded hands with an average sales price of $4.7 million for single-family residences and $2.5 million for condos. The least expensive sale was 65 Mount Vernon Street Unit 1, a 343 square foot studio which sold for $490,000. The most expensive sale was 72 Mount Vernon Street Unit PH, a 4,300 square foot penthouse which sold for $9.8 million. Really quick, my name is Charlie Smith. I'm a real estate advisor in Boston, and I help people from all over buy, lease, or invest in the city. If you have any questions about Boston or real estate in general, you can find my contact information in the description of this video. As with several areas in Boston, Beacon Street features some of the most prominent real estate in the city. Beacon Street begins at the corner of Tremont and School Street at the edge of Beacon Hill, which is between Government Center and the Boston Common. From that point, it goes up Beacon Hill for a block where it meets Park Street in front of the Massachusetts State House. From that intersection, it descends into Beacon Hill as a two-lane bi-directional street until it reaches Charles Street, where it becomes a one-way avenue that runs forward to Back Bay. Homes on Beacon Street have some of the best views of the Boston Common and Public Garden, as those properties look directly onto the two parks. Of course, Beacon Street can get quite busy at times, however, unlike the other streets mentioned, it's much wider, making navigation easier. Beacon Street is home to a Starbucks, several offices, a gym, and the Cheers pub, known worldwide for the TV show Cheers. There are 6 total single-family homes and 395 condo residences. Over the past 3 years, 46 homes have traded hands with an average sales price of $18 million for single families and $2.1 million for condos. The least expensive home sold on Beacon Street was 21 Beacon Street Unit 7D, a 300 square foot studio which sold for $375,000. The most expensive home sold was 78 Beacon Street, an 8,300 square foot single family home which sold for $19 million. Probably the most iconic and exclusive street in Boston is Louisburg Square. This is considered the heart of Beacon Hill and is one of the most expensive blocks in the entire country. Louisburg Square features a long, narrow park that extends from Mount Vernon Street to Pinckney Street. The square was laid out as part of development in Beacon Hill during the 1820s, and the houses around it were constructed in the 1830s and 1840s. Like most of the other houses in the neighborhood, they are generally 3 or 4 stories tall, and many have bow fronts, including a row of 8 bow-fronted houses on the left side. Several of the homes have roof terraces with Boston skyline and Charles River views. As for the park itself, it was one of a number of small urban parks that were laid out in Boston during this period. Louisburg Square has remained largely untouched since the mid-19th century. The park is privately owned and maintained by the residents of the square, and in 1846 they added a cast iron fence around the perimeter of the park. Louisburg Square's residential history begins in 1826 when a deed laid out a plan in which a central park and adjacent streets would be owned by the founding neighbors, hereafter known as the proprietors of Louisburg Square. This group of 28 homeowners is referenced as one of the earliest examples of a homeowners association in the country. There are 28 separate deeds consisting of 15 single-family homes, 10 condos, and 3 multifamily buildings. As one might expect, sales here are typically infrequent due to its small geographical area and extra large price point. Over the past 3 years, 4 homes have traded hands with an average sales price of $14 million. The least expensive home sold was 1 Louisburg Square, a condo with 968 square feet, which sold for $1.8 million. The most expensive home sold was 20 Louisburg Square, a 7,600 square foot single family residence which transacted for $15 million. If you're in the market for a home on one of these streets, there are several things that should be considered. Elevator access is not guaranteed as many of the buildings are older, and some units will be walk-ups. Elevator access in a building is great, with direct-to-unit access being even better. As mentioned, finding an on-street permit parking spot in Beacon Hill can be quite challenging. It is also fairly difficult to find a property with an included space. With many of the homes being so narrow, quite a few buildings are split across numerous floors, making single-level living more desirable. Ideally, you want to find a property which has all bedrooms on the same floor. Overall, Beacon Hill is one of the best places to live in the city and state for its historic charm, central location, and safety. Every street in Beacon Hill has excellent dwelling options in which to live or invest. If you're considering a move to Boston or would like further information about Beacon Hill, I'm ready to assist you. Check the description to book a meeting, email or call me, and stay tuned for more videos on Boston real estate and luxury condo buildings.